Welcome to the Playful Life podcast. I'm your host, Crystal. On the podcast today, I have Daniel Wilgenbusch, and him and his business partner, Alex Klott, are the founders of the Vīvall Group. Daniel is committed to building champions, and the Vīvall Group helps leaders and entrepreneurs bridge the gap between their vision and reality. This is such an important topic, and I talk about this a lot even in my own health and wellness coaching, that we have a vision for how we want our health to look, our relationships, our career, our family, but we don't really understand the strategies or the steps we need to take and how we actually bridge that gap between where we are and where we want to be. Daniel and Alex have really got this great system for helping people implement those strategies and habits, those habits that I talk about all the time, and really tracking them, but also staying accountable and just having a really efficient and good roadmap, again, for getting to where you want to actually be. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did with Daniel. Welcome to the Playful Life, Daniel. I'm so looking forward to this interview with you today.
Come on, I know I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm honored, to be asked to be on here with you and share some time with your audience and with you today. It's going to be fun. It's going to be potent. Don't know exactly where it's going to go, which is half the fun. And so, very much looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And that is the name of the game here. We're being playful, so nothing is scripted. Anything goes. And you and I actually connected in San Diego, where you are currently. And everyone knows I'm from the Midwest here. And I traveled out for this amazing business conference, the Pathfinders Conference, faith-centered entrepreneurs. And so that was such a blessing to meet you and just some other really incredible people that are just doing God's work and everything in the world. So I'm sure our conversation will sort of circle around to that in some way. But Daniel, you and your business partner, who you can talk about if you like and introduce at some point, but we're giving a presentation. I'm so glad I stepped into that room, and it was really just speaking a lot of truth to like how I think, the things that I've learned, how I love to coach my clients, the messaging that I love to say. And I was like, oh my goodness, we have to connect, and we have to just, again, reiterate all this to my audience and your audience. And I think this time of year, especially, is a great time because people are thinking about a lot of this. So that was really loaded. Let's talk. Let's kind of bring it back. So Daniel, you are building champions with the Vīvall Group. So how did that come about? Were you born an amazing champion? I mean, of course, we're all born as God's children, so it was always in you. But I'm curious what maybe that path was for you.
Yeah, I love the question. I'll touch on our founder Alex. He's the owner, the founder of Vīvall Group. He's one of my closest friends. How we met is I'll get into that in a second as well. But long story short, so I grew up near Chicago. I grew up in Illinois, northern Chicago, and my entire life I've always had big ambition, big dreams, big things I wanted to do. I always felt like I was created to be great. I didn't know why, because like the irony of it is I grew up in like a really small town where like nobody was really doing anything. So it was ironic that I felt that way. But I never like excelled in school. I because I just didn't see how it applied. I always asked I was a kid that always asked my teachers, like, can you just tell me how I'm going to use this in real life? And like, I was never satisfied with their responses. Like, they're like, no, you just have to do this. I'm like, that's not a good enough answer. And so for me, I never really liked school that much. I always wanted to be successful. I always wanted to make a difference. I always wanted to impact people. And, long story short, I ended up starting a business, heading into my sophomore year of college. I was going to college in Illinois, and it was my, fourth semester, so the second semester of my sophomore year, that I ended up dropping out of college to pursue that business full time. Fell in love with business, fell in love with an opportunity, a lane where I could work with people, grow people, develop people, build success, build a team, build a company, all that kind of stuff. And long story short, the company didn't work, company failed. I know you might have thought that was going in a totally different direction. The company ended up failing, but my goodness, I learned so much about people, about different types of income and different business strategies, and mentorship, and the potency of leadership development and training and speaking. And so long story short, in that season of life, I met a guy who he was like one of the in my opinion, best public speakers in the world. He was a performance coach for Fortune 500 companies, for NFL athletes and fighters and musicians. And I heard him speak once, and I was just so awestruck by the presence he carried. It wasn't the results he had, it wasn't the money he made, it was the presence he had. I'd never heard anybody like that before. And, just by God's grace, we were able to connect. And, he told me, he's like, dude, if you're ever in California, this conference that I met him at, I was speaking at, and he was the keynote for it. He said, look, dude, if you're ever in California, he's like, I think you're the real deal. Link up with me. We'll grab lunch. I'll do anything I can to help you. And long story short, it took me 2 years to take him up on that offer. And I ended up moving to California to get around this guy. And he changed my life. He introduced me to the most incredible communities, leaders, and mentors who poured into me and developed me, the church that I go to, and which is where I ultimately met, one of my close friends, and ultimately the owner of Vīvall Group. I was actually the first client for Vīvall. He was a friend of mine, and he reached out to me, back in 2020, and he said, dude, I want to show you something that I'm working on. I think this thing could take you to the next level. And so, I kind of bet on him as my friend, and he took me through it, and it radically transformed my life. And so Alex Claude is his name, the founder of Vīvall Group. And you guys can go find him on Instagram. He's a stud. But anyway, so he took me through it. It was so potent. I was at the time selling solar here in San Diego, which is a very lucrative business. And it was so potent for me when I went through the Vīvall program that I ended up leaving solar late last year, and partnered with Alex in this as one of his strategists to really take clients, leaders, organizations through the Vīvall operating system, which is designed to basically bridge the gap between vision and reality for leaders and organizations. And it's just been incredible. It's been an incredible ride. So blessed to be in business with him and be able to do the things that we're able to do. It's a crazy blessing. It's been a lot of fun, and we're really just getting started with it. The company's about 2 years old now, and we've just been so blessed to serve so many clients already. It's been incredible. So that's a little snippet as to kind of what happened, how it all came to be. I live in San Diego now. It'll be 5 years in January that I've been in San Diego. So
awesome. Wow. So there's some follow-up I want to do here. So interesting that you say it took you 2 years to follow up on that offer with the gentleman that you were so inspired with. And I think that is no small thing to kind of like pass by, because I think opportunity does pass. So, there is that you want to move on things, but also just knowing that if you think an opportunity passed, it maybe didn't completely. So that is, I think, really interesting, and probably speaks very highly to your character and the type of person you are, to say that there was something in you that it didn't stop you to say, oh, man, how long has it been? 2 years since this guy, offered me this, and now I'm finally getting around to doing this thing. So I guess, what was that like? Was it scary to take that leap? Did you have contact with him over that period of time, or kind of tell us that? Because I think that is a big thing that stops people a lot of times.
Incredible question. Honestly, the reality is I'm just going to be brutally honest. If one thing you'll get to know about me is I'm always brutally honest. I lead with vulnerability. I think it's the only way to lead. The reason I didn't follow up on it for 2 years is because I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel like I was worth his time. I didn't feel like I was qualified to follow up on the offer. Like in my mind, I was like, what could I possibly bring to the table? Like I'm broke. Like I couldn't pay you. I don't like. I didn't see myself the way he saw me. Right. Sometimes what I don't even want to say sometimes, I do believe this, that every single one of us needs someone who believes in us more than we do. And it oftentimes helps for it to be somebody not just your spouse, like somebody who is maybe ahead of you in the lane of industry or marketplace that you're in. I really do believe everybody needs somebody like that. And that's who he was for me. So I didn't feel worthy of it, and I didn't see what I would bring to the table. But what ultimately ended up happening is this would have been in December of 2014 that me and him had that initial interaction. And basically, in 2015, my parents lost their house in bankruptcy. My That's when my business failed as well. And the girl that I was dating, who I thought I was going to marry, broke up with me all in about a 3 to 4 month span. And I ended up depressed, literally contemplated suicide. Like it felt like my entire life was ripped out from under me. And so people who'd become very close friends who I was building that previous business with had moved from Wisconsin, because I was in Illinois, they were in Wisconsin, they moved to Arizona. And they reached out to me and said, hey man, like we know that you're trying to kind of start fresh. Come move in with us in Arizona. You don't have to pay us rent. Like just come live here, and get back on your feet as long as you need. And so when I moved out to Arizona in October of 2015, I was given an opportunity to really, I look at human beings as like an acorn, right? Like we all have, every acorn has an oak tree on the inside of it. But if you put an acorn on a bathroom tile, nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter how long it's there for. If you put an acorn in the right soil, it's amazing what an environment will do. And so I just needed to get in a different environment. And that's when I moved across the country to live in Arizona. It was a few months later. It would have been, I believe, February of 2016. So I guess it's about a year and a half later, not quite 2 years. Um, so February of 2016, I ended up reaching back out to this individual and said, "Hey, man, I don't know if you remember me. We had a conversation. We met. We both spoke at this conference. Would love to, have a little bit of your time and share with you what I see." Where I see my life going. And so we got on a phone call by the grace of God. I didn't think it'd even be possible. And he said, yeah, dude, I remember you. And he's like, again, if you're ever in California, reach out to me. I'll do anything I can to help you. And so 6 weeks later, I just up and moved to California just to get around him. I didn't just want lunch with him. I wanted a friendship. I wanted to learn from him. And so in that process, you asked, was it scary? Yeah, it was scary. I lived out of my car for a year when I moved to California. And so I couldn't afford to live there. I didn't have money to pay the, rent costs in California. And so literally lived out of my car for a year, slept on people's couches. People said, where'd you shower? The gym. I went to LA Fitness. That's where I showered. Where did you spend your days? Starbucks, and I found a job at a country club in Newport Beach. And I just figured out, was it scary? It was crazy scary. I wanted to quit almost every single day. I wanted to go home. I kept thinking to myself, what am I freaking doing? Like I'm living out of my car. I'm at the rock bottom, can hardly pay my bills, can't even pay for rent. Like just go home. And something in me kept telling me, just stay the course. You didn't come this far just to come this far. And long story short, I had no idea what was ahead of me, but this relationship literally transformed every area of my life. And so was it scary? Yeah, it was crazy scary, but I just don't believe there's another way to live. Like every great story has drama, and people like hearing great stories, but oftentimes people don't like living great stories. And if you want to be successful at some point, you need to have a great story, which means you got to go through some freaking drama. So that's what it was.
Amen. Yes. Oh, so good. And again, I do love that vulnerability and saying, like, you just didn't think you were worthy. And so often I feel that is the limiting belief that, and I know you and Alex had talked about that in your presentation, that limiting belief or that identity that we live in of unworthiness for whatever reason, and it comes from somewhere. And we really act in a way that wants to affirm that belief that we have. So um, but it's interesting also that you took action anyway. And I'm wondering, was there something that was there like some affirmation, or was it just clearly like you were out of options and you were like, well, I guess the next step is moving to California or Arizona. So, and it's funny too, because that wasn't maybe that the full action that needed to be taken. Like you ended up obviously in California and around this gentleman, and life changed for you in a drastic way, but you had to kind of take one step. You had to go, okay, well, I know there's a comfortable situation somewhat in Arizona waiting for me and doing that. So I guess maybe was there something mindset wise that shifted in you, or was it really making that move that shifted that for you? What was that for you?
It's a good question. I think it was a big part of it was just a gut feeling. Like I'm a big believer in it's something that I say a lot for anybody who would follow me, but um, what gets me through really tough times is I will ask myself the question of what story am I writing in this pain? Because at the end of the day, every single time you're going through a painful circumstance or situation, right, there is a story being written and you're the author of it. And you have the opportunity to either write a triumphant story and make the decision that this is going to be a story that I tell in the future of my triumph and overcoming and growth and all of that. Or you can make the decision that I'm going to let this defeat me and I'm going to tell a story that is rooted in bitterness and regret for the rest of my life. And I think that's unfortunately where a lot of people, too many people live, is they let these non-decisions, because a non-decision is a decision, right? Deciding, like, not doing anything is a decision, right? And so for me, I was like, I know this is a tough circumstance. What's the worst thing that could happen? Is it doesn't work out and I just move back to Illinois? Like, that's the worst thing that could happen. It's not like the worst thing that happens is I die. Like, that's not a possible scenario, right? It's like, no, I'm going to move out there. It doesn't work out. And then I come back to Illinois. Why not give it a shot? And so it was really just a gut instinct. I couldn't explain it. It made zero sense on paper. Moving there didn't make any sense. I knew these two people. I had no work lined up. I had no way how I'd even pay my flipping phone bill, let alone anything else. Like, yeah, I had rent paid for, but I still had to exist on my own. Right. Um, and so like, it was a massive leap of faith, but I'm a believer that if you live in a place of faith, and you live in a place where you're going to do your all, I just believe that God's going to make up the gap. Like, if your best is 2% of 100, you do that too, he'll do 98. If your best is you do 98 and there's two left, he'll do the two. Like, I believe he'll fill in the gap, but too oftentimes we're trying to do the 100, and a life of success is never you doing the whole 100. You need miracles on your side in order to become successful. You need crazy situations and circumstances and out of the box. I never saw that coming. Everyone who's successful has had those things happen where they saw the full 100%. They said, I can only do 60. So they do the 60. And then what do you know? Favor shows up, the other 40 gets made up, and it happens. So that's really how I live my life. Is I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to just believe that the other percentage, whatever that is, will be the gap will be met by whatever you believe, the universe or God or whatever. I believe in God, right? And that's my faith, and I've never been wrong. It's worked every single time. So that's really what it is for me. And at the time, I didn't even believe in God. I believed in the universe and all that kind of stuff. And so whatever you want to call it, it doesn't really matter. But the point is, what helped me make those decisions, and the same decision to then move to California, and a decision that we're making right now to, potentially move again. We're operating out of the same philosophy is that. And so that's really a big part. Is it's just a gut instinct that a lot of times when you're making a decision, the right decision doesn't add up all on paper, right? People try and make all of their decisions where everything is perfectly neat. That's not what success looks like. That's not what right decision making looks like. You have to make decisions based on wisdom, but there also has to be a faith component. There also has to be a gap that you can't quite meet. Otherwise, you're just going to live within your own power your entire life, and you'll never experience incredible things happening. So that's kind of how we approach it, me and my wife.
Yes. Boom. I love it. Yeah, very true. That whatever you can bring, like God equips you for the part that you need and doesn't just leave you hanging. And even, I coach people in health and wellness, but I also coach pageant women. And that is such a message for them too, that there's a dream on your heart because God put it there. It didn't just come out of nowhere. And, I think that sort of helps with that worthiness type of situation to say, well, yes, of course you're worthy of this thing that you really want because something greater than you put it there in your mind and your heart. Something other than you put you on this path. And I really love that you speak about that. So so tell me, like, when it came to sort of going out again on your, not on your own, but partnering with Alex and going with Vīvall, what was sort of the thing that drew you in that direction? How was that different from maybe what you were doing, or
Mhm.
or how was it complementary to what you were already doing that you could see that it was going to take you to the next level?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars in my life on coaches, mentors, conferences, books, courses, seminars, like tens upon tens and tens of thousands of dollars. Like probably a lot of people, right? A lot of people like are willing to invest in themselves. And I think the problem is just that like there's so many things that we like invest in, and there's like, and it might be like really great philosophy, but the strategy and execution of it is weak. And I was really sick of that. I was really sick of like investing in things, investing in programs, investing in coaches, investing in this, that, whatever. And it's like I would learn all these incredible things, but transformation wouldn't happen that actually manifested in results in my life. I was sick of that. And this with Vīvall Group, it was completely different, right? There was massive life transforming, mindset altering philosophy, because philosophy matters. You can have execution, but without philosophy, you're just going to be executing on the wrong stuff. But if you have the right philosophy, ultimately, if you don't have the execution component, you're going to know all of this good stuff, but you won't ultimately get results. And so we call that mindset and habits, right? Um, and so for most people, right, they learn all of these incredible things, right? They have in some capacities the right mindsets, but they don't have a framework for execution, which is the habit component of it. What happens is you just ultimately know all of these great things, but you do nothing about it to get the result. And 3 years goes by, 5 years goes by, 10 years goes by, and you still know all of these great things, probably even more, but you don't have any results to justify what you've learned, right? On the other side, you see people like that do 75 hard, which is an incredible program, right? 75 hard is a habit component, right? Where it's like people see these incredible transformations, but if you notice, most people do 75 hard. When it's over, they completely revert back to who they were prior. They're oftentimes not changed. They got a result that was short term, but not sustainable because they adjusted their habits, but they did not adjust their mindset, right? And so you need both to come together. And that's really what Vīvall did. Vīvall, when I went through it, I was at a place where, I was doing a lot. I had a lot of responsibility. This is August of 2020. A lot of responsibility, wearing a lot of hats, multiple different businesses I was involved with, a lot of different responsibility in my church, newly married, like all sorts of different stuff going on. And I felt like I was like doing okay at like everything. And I was kind of like navigating, I was managing things okay, but I wasn't like winning at anything. I felt like I was doing a lot and I was really busy and, even in some capacity productive, but I wasn't crushing it at anything. And I hated that feeling. I couldn't stand that feeling. And so when I went through Vīvall, the big thing is I had these big visions of what my life could look like, but I had no framework to ultimately get me there. And so what was happening in my life was I was working crazy hard, 12, 14, 16-hour days in many cases. And then I'd go to sleep at night and I had no peace. I felt guilty going to sleep. I felt like, what am I doing? I can sleep when I'm dead. Like I can, sleeps for the broke, those quotes that you hear. And I was working and working and working. And the reason I realized I was working so freaking hard is because I actually did not know if I was on track to hit my goals or not, because I had actually no practical framework or mapped out activities and things required, whatever, to actually get there. And so I was basically in my own mind, crossing my fingers, working as hard as possible in hopes I would eventually get where I wanted to get to. And the problem is most people live that way and they never get where they want because they end up burning themselves out along the way. Right? Every single leader wants the same thing. And what that is they want to scale while remaining balanced in life. And that is what Vīvall did for me. It taught me and gave me a legitimate framework, the right philosophy, mindset, but also the right execution habits, brought it together that literally within months, I was able to push out all of the things that were out of alignment in my life, right? I brought everything into alignment from mindset and a habit standpoint. And literally over the last, 7 quarters, because we teach our clients to live in 90-day worlds. Over the last 7 quarters, I've hit like almost 70 goals in the last 7 quarters, which is insane. And our clients' standard is they hit at least 90 goals, and they usually track anywhere from 9 to 15 a quarter. We've got clients that are startup entrepreneurs. They're just getting started in business. We've got people who run 7 companies, people who own $50 million companies. We've got people, sales people. We've got corporate leaders. We've got people across all walks of life, right? But at the end of the day, when I looked at Vīvall and I actually went through it, it was so potent because it took me to a place where for the first time in my life, it didn't matter how big or small my goals were, I was hitting them. And I had peace at night where I went to bed and I slept well. And I take more time off now than I ever did. I have more peace in my mind now than I ever did. And I'm hitting more goals now and have more responsibility now than I ever did, yet I have more free time. And it's because there was this incredible framework that I literally live out of now. And my entire life changed. And the way we see ourselves, like we call ourselves habit transformation strategists, but we see ourselves as masters of execution. And that's where I think most people are missing out is they have the right mentality or philosophy or mindset, but they don't have the right execution components. And they have self-limiting beliefs that are standing in the way that they're unaware of. And I think that's what everybody deals with. And that's what we've, I guess, figured out in some capacity how to deal with.
Yes. Yes. A million, million resounding yeses. So couple of things. And I take notes while my guests are speaking because I'm like, I don't want to forget to talk about this. So, like Jim Rohn talks a lot about philosophy, and I love that is like going back to, like you said, that story that you're writing for yourself. Are you constantly playing the victim, or are you going to take some self-responsibility for the life that you're leading and the story that you want to write for your future? And so I think that really is where the basis of it starts. And I absolutely agree, obviously, about habits, being sort of that magic ingredient that people often don't have. Like that is the strategy. That is the sort of the working parts that happen every single day. And it's, I love also that you break it into 90-day chunks, because people have this ultimate big gigantic goal that they're trying to get to, no matter what it is. And they don't really see all the little goals that they have to hit along the way. So if you can't see that, how are you supposed to see the strategy, the habits, the actual work that you're going to do every day to get you from A to B, B to C, C to D, whatever? And I love that so much. And it is also very much a mindset thing. And I know you talk a lot about that, limiting beliefs and the stories we tell ourselves. And man, this is so key. And one word that came up for me was surrender. And again, going back to how you said, God takes care of the rest. And like habits, I think people often think of habits as very like restricting, like, oh, I'm going to have to eat so many meals a day, or I'm going to have to intermittent fast, or I'm going to have to set a bedtime, or I'm going to have to not hit snooze in the morning. And it's like all these things that they think they're putting these restrictions in their life. But really what I have found that if I just know the habits that I need to practice and let go of all the rest, especially the outcome, it really, like, the gaps really do get filled in. And so, yeah, that word just came up for me a lot. So I guess, with your clients and the goals that they're setting, is there, a specific way that people choose those goals for themselves? Is that sort of something you help them with? Because I think that can be very tricky as well. Someone comes to you and says, well, I want to make six figures in my business this year. Well, okay, that
Mhm.
in my mind, that's a big goal. Like, how do you break that down for people?
Love that. Yeah. Well, here's the deal. So we have two components when we walk people through our workshops, right? We have the blueprint, is what we call blueprint, which is that's the mindset. And then we have infrastructure, whereas we actually build out the plan, right? It's like an architect, right? We're like a mind and habit architect. And so the way that we do it is we figure out what is your 10-year vision for every single area of your life. Like, we're not just looking to work with people who just want to make more money. Like, when you talk about building champions, my personal mission is to build champions. In my mind, a champion is not somebody who's crushing business, but they sacrifice everything that really matters in life on the altar of achievement, right? That's actually what Vīvall was founded out of. That's what Alex's dad unfortunately did. He was massively successful, but he sacrificed his family and he sacrificed the time with them and sacrificed a lot of things that really, really mattered. His health being the key one, on the altar of achievement. Massive success, but died, when he was like 50 or 52 years old, so early. And that was one of the things that really burned on the inside of Alex that made him, obsessed with solving this problem. Whereas, like, we believe at Vīvall Group that you were created to have it all, that we weren't just created to win in one area of our life, like make a bunch of money, but our marriage suffers, or have a great marriage, but our finances suffer. Maybe we have a great relationship with our kids, but we're 400 pounds overweight. Like, we weren't created for that. We were created to win on all fronts of our life. And so what we do for our clients is we create a 10-year crystal clear picture with them for what their 10-year vision looks like for every single area of their life. And we have, in part of our workshop called Strategic Planning Execution, is where we actually will break down what are all of and we'll pull from that 10-year vision every area. And so you'll have a crystal clear picture of every area of your life in 10 years from now. And we'll reverse engineer it, right? What is it you have to have where do you have to be in 3 to 5 years from now in this area, in this area, in this area, in this area to be on track for that 10? Where do you have to be in 1 year to be on track for that 3 to 5? What do you have to then do, right? So not have or outcome, but then do, which is activity. What do you have to have done activity wise in the next 12 weeks to be on track for that 1 year outcome? And then we break the 12 weeks down to week and week to day. And so that's why, like, for me 2 years ago, I was in a place where, like, I was crazy busy. My schedule was freaking slammed. But what I was doing is I was just doing a lot. And we operate off the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule is that we believe that 20% of inputs are responsible for 80% of outputs. And most people, they aren't doing 20% activities that produce 80% of outcomes. They're stuck in the weeds of doing 80% activities that produce only 20% outcomes. And so what we do with our clients is, in our leadership portion, is we will help to pull all of that 80% stuff out, teach them to automate, delegate, eliminate, or habituate those things, where they can now spend almost all of their time on the 20% stuff. And you get such a larger impact in your life in every area, where now we're only tracking activities that are 20% activities that produce 80% outcomes in every area of your life. So which is really only one or two things in every area. There's not 10, 20% needle movers in any area of life. There's really 1, 2, or 3. And we identify what those are for you based on where you want to be in 10 years, reverse that down to today. And you leave our workshops actually with a framework in place of what you have to do tomorrow in this area, and this area, and this area. And then all you do is those things and you're done for the day. So all I do is I have my goals. I do those few things for the day. Boom, I'm done. Why? Because I'm on track to get where I need to get to in 10 years, 3 to 5, and so on and so forth. And so that's what we do on the front end. Then the back end, we have a strategy that basically guarantees you'll actually do it. Because in the end of the day, like I said, execution's the game. We can build all this out, but at the end of the day, you still have to do it. So we have a way to basically force your hand where you have to do all of that. And that is where we will then, through you doing the activities that produce those outcomes, become the person that has those outcomes in 10 years. Because success is a becoming game. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are, right? That person, that you in 10 years from now, that crystal clear picture you painted, that's a real person, right? What you have to do is you have to learn to think, believe, and do what that person thinks, believes, and does today. And if you can do that today, you will actually compress those results from 10 years down to 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. And that's what our clients are seeing, is they're seeing these 10-year visions compressed into a year, into 2 years, into 3 years, and they're getting so much further than they thought they could do in 10 years. They're doing it in 1 or 2 or 3. And so I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I completely agree. It is about forming a new identity and seeing that person as a real person that exists. I think so often we can only believe that this very version of ourselves, or sometimes not even the present version, but the past version of ourselves, is the real us. And the truth is that every day we live on this earth, we should hopefully learn and grow and become a different person. So, after this conversation with you, Daniel, I'm going to be a different person than I was, 40 minutes ago or whatever. So it's cool. I love that being a piece of it. I think that's really important. And sort of what you're saying about, breaking it down and then having accountability to actually do the things and act in that way, because for whatever reason, well, maybe I do kind of attribute this a little bit just to our formal education system and the way we're taught to learn, if that makes sense. And, at some point, I talk about this a lot. I mean, this is called the Playful Life. I talk about play a lot as a mindset, because when children are learning, they're not learning so that they'll get some sort of recognition, or they don't really judge the process. They're just sort of in it. They're just picking things up and looking around the world. And I'm sure you're experiencing, and you will experience this more with your little one now. And I'm very excited to bring my son into the world, because I'm like, I want to experience life again through a child's eyes, to just get that picture more and more. And at some point we learn to start raising our hands, even to ask a question, like validate me before I can even ask, to see if I have the right answer. Or, well, we better not speak up unless we have the right answer. Or
Right.
if we're not perfect and we don't make straight A's in school, then we're doing something wrong. Or, if it takes us a little while to learn something, for some reason, again, there's something wrong with us. What's the diagnosis? What is, how do we treat this? I feel that, and we're even starting to do this with children, and it's really discouraging. I have friends that are telling me, well, my kid isn't doing this one certain thing. So they're saying, well, they're behind, and then we got to do that. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, let's just stop. Let's just let kids, learn at their own pace. And I think adults really need to hear that a lot, that it's okay to make some mistakes along the way and to learn and grow just for the sake of learning and growing. And like you're saying, do the things every day, knowing that those results will come. And whether they come in 10 years or it gets compressed into a smaller amount of time, like you said, shouldn't really be the thing that matters so much. It's not about what we're attaining, but the person that we're becoming during that process. So
That's the goal.
I just love that so much.
Yeah, that's to us, that's really all that matters. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you're not becoming someone better, the results are really a moot point. But at the same time, if you're becoming somebody different, but you're not getting results, it's also a moot point, right? So that's why habits and mindset need to be collaborative, right? Need to work together. You have to transform who you are, and by transforming who you are, your results will change. But there's got to be a practical framework for both, right? And I think a lot of people, we really hate a lot of the coaching space. It's part of the reason why this company was created, was because I think there's a lot of people who, like, it's not hard to teach mindset. It's not hard to teach people to a lot of great stuff. What's difficult for people is the execution component, right? And that's really where we pride ourselves, is in actually getting people results. If you're not getting results, then why are we even doing this, right? It's about building more effective leaders for change in the world, right? And leaders, whether people like to hear or not, get results. So, like people say all the time, like, we don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. That's a half truth. It is
Mm.
true, but it's not the whole truth. In business and in the marketplace, that's partially true. But the other side of that is we also don't care what you know unless you have results. And so we need to get people results, the right people results. We need to build the right people with results so their voice will carry more weight. They can make changes in the world. If we don't have results, but we have a lot of great philosophy and mindset, um, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to make much of a difference. And so, anyways, that's why we exist, to bridge the gap between vision and reality, right? To bridge the gap. There is a gap there, and we are going to help bring that together. Um, anyways, that's kind of our disposition.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I think how you're saying too that it's not just results in one area, but all of those things.
All
And
areas.
going
Yeah.
back to, that is very much my client. The people who come to me are people who are really successful at climbing a ladder in one area of their life, but all the rest of it has sort of fallen by the wayside, whether that's
Yeah.
family, relationships, health. Health really is the main one, obviously, why people end up coming to me. And
Mhm.
um, it's so evident that you're able to do the work, obviously, and get these results in some area of your life. Like, let's apply this, now to the health component and the relationships and all those things. And I think all those pieces really fit so well together and are so vital. And I love Vīvall, like you said. Was it revive all is how you told me how to remember it and not say
Mhm.
it in my Chicago accent. Um, and my word for 2023 and going forward with a lot of my branding is alive, actively living in vitality every day, because it's vitality in every area of our life, not just
Totally.
one.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such a great message to take away from this as well. And yeah, to look at your life. If you're not getting the results that you want in some area, like, what's going on? Right? And do something
There's
about
something.
it to change it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Come on. I love it. So good.
So, Daniel, where can people get connected with either you or Vīvall, and kind of find out what you've got going on for the rest of the year and into next year?
Yeah, totally. Well, you can find me personally at Daniel Wilgenbusch, Instagram, pretty much all platforms. Instagram is one I'm most active on. Um, Vīvall Group, it's Vivall Group, at Vīvall Group, um, on Instagram as well. On, again, most major platforms, you can find us there. Um, and then you could also head over to vivallgroup.com and just check our website out. There's a lot of good content on there. If you want more info on what it is we're doing, we do free strategy sessions. Reach out to us. We can see if we can diagnose your problem. But that's what I say. Stay connected with us. And if we can serve you in any way, we'd love to. But Crystal, I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a lot of fun. As always, just super, super honored, as always, to have the opportunity to speak with people, whether it's one person or a million people. We do everything we can, and we just want to serve people. We just love people. So we're honored to be on here. Thanks for letting us represent ourselves and trusting us to represent you on your podcast.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Likewise, Daniel. I honor you for being here. I know it's a holiday week when we're filming this, and you have a brand new baby at home. So I really do appreciate your time. And I think that also speaks to just how passionate you are for the work that you do and how you serve others in the world. So thanks again.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. If someone you love would benefit from this message, please, please share this podcast with them. And if you want more out of your life, not just surviving every day, but you want to truly thrive, visit me at crystallizedhealthadvisors.com or on Facebook to schedule your free dream strategy call with me today. Do not hesitate any longer. Life is short, and I want you to truly live the playful life. I will see you next time, and as always, stay playful.